Sam Pardue from Indow Windows, a company that specializes in window inserts that reduce noise and heat loss, began working on a fix for his business as soon as news hit of the first confirmed case in Oregon. Now, Pardue's comprehensive plan titled Clean Practice is free and available for any business to use. Thanks for joining us this morning, Sam.
Good morning, Emily. It's great to be here with you.
So excited to hear about your last few months. It hasn't been easy on anyone, and it sounds like you have a ray of light to share with us. So let's talk first about what happened February 28th when Oregon had its first confirmed case. A lot of folks didn't know what to do with themselves. What made you come up with a plan so quickly?
Well, I had been following this new virus that was circulating in China because my partner is a doctor of Chinese medicine, an acupuncturist, and she alerted me that there was this new epidemic spreading in China. And so, for whatever reason, I just started reading news reports about it really early, and I knew that it was coming. I mean, it was very obvious if you just looked at the basic metrics about the disease, like how easily it was transmitted, how long, people were sick with it before they showed symptoms. It seemed very clear that it was coming to the United States, and once it hit the United States, it would spread just like it was spreading in other countries. So I had that mindset going into it. It was a surprise that the Portland metro area was one of the first 3 cities in the United States to actually have what's called community spread, where it's spreading and they don't know who is spreading it in your community. So, but when that news hit, I was kind of already ready. And I went home that weekend and I said, gosh, we're a manufacturing company. And it's incredibly important for us to keep our teams safe. So how are we going to do that? And I just did all the research I could about COVID-19, and I came up with a plan. And I decided it was really important to present the plan to the team on Monday morning. So that Monday morning, I came into the office. I called an all-company meeting. And I said, hey, everybody, this is coming, and it's going to happen here. And we need to prepare, and we need to start right away. And that's when we prepared and presented a plan to our team.
Wow. So, again, what was the time frame between when you started to write the plan and delivering it to the employees for feedback?
Well, I guess I worked on it Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Wow.
And then on Monday morning, first thing, I presented the plan to them. That's like right after COVID-19 was announced to be circulating in the Portland metro area. So It was pretty much the next business.
Wow, that seems super fast. So tell us, this clean practice plan that you created is based on something called Lean, a business methodology that reduces wasted time and increases efficiency. Is that correct?
That's right. So I think a lot of people know that a lot of Japanese manufacturing companies are really efficient, and Toyota pioneered what's called lean manufacturing back in the post-war era in the 1950s. They were actually taught a lot of these principles by a consultant from the United States, Mr. Deming. But the principles of lean manufacturing are so powerful that they've spread throughout manufacturing companies all over the United States. And so as a small manufacturing company, we're what's called a mass custom manufacturing business. Every single window insert we make is a unique shape and size. It has to fit its window frame precisely. And in order to do that at large volumes, we've had to develop and use a lot of lean manufacturing skills. They help us stay organized. They help us maintain really good quality. Now, we didn't know that we were going to use lean when we started out. We had a plan, and we began implementing it. And the really important principle here is as we began implementing it, we got everybody on the team involved. And as we got everybody on the team involved, we just started relying on the business techniques that we had been using for years to become a really efficient and effective manufacturer. And it wasn't until I looked in the rearview mirror after a couple weeks and I kind of told our production manager, I was like, Josh, wow, the team is doing a great job implementing this plan I came up with, and they're actually building on it. And we started talking about it. We realized that we were using, the reason why we were doing well is we were just relying on the skills that we had as a business. And many of those skills were from lean manufacturing. And that's, I think, why the plan has been really effective, is because lean is a bunch of principles that are often used in manufacturing, but can really be transported outside of manufacturing, help you get your team mobilized around something and get great outcomes.
That's really interesting. So what are some of the components of your plan? How did you need to change your work based on the resurgence of COVID?
Well, at the time, the CDC's guidance was very much oriented towards surfaces, right? And this epidemic has evolved, and our understanding of COVID-19 has changed over time. But in those early days, the guidance was you've got to be very careful about surfaces. You've got to wash your hands all the time, right? So to respond to that guidance, we used a system of dividing up our factory into zones, and then we appointed zone captains to be kind of in charge of their zone, and these were organized around kind of teams. It's kind of a space, and it's the people that work inside of that space. And we have a 20,000 square foot facility in North Portland where we make the window inserts. And there's a technique in lean called a gemba walk. Gemba, it's a Japanese word. It means space, and it's all about having the senior leaders of the organization walk through the space with the team that works in that space and to observe what's happening. And in the manufacturing realm, you might be looking for inventory piling up, because that might indicate there's a bottleneck in your manufacturing line. But we were not looking for inefficiencies. We were organizing into teams, and then we were walking through our spaces, and we were looking for COVID-19 transmission vectors. And we would then use another technique from Lean, which is called visual factory or visual management, and we'd put a brightly colored dot on any space, any surface that more than one hand would touch in a 72-hour period. And each team had its own color, so you knew when you were entering the red zone because there would be red dots. You knew you'd be entering the green zone because there'd be green dots. And what this allowed us to do is to have a very easily trainable and easily followable cleaning schedule, right? And fundamental to lean manufacturing is the idea that you need to get people at every level of your organization involved in finding the solutions and then in implementing them. And when you do that, you get the best response. You get the best outcomes. And I certainly think that was true at Indow, because what we saw was that once we had put up all these dots, it was really easy to train people on the cleaning schedule. And we didn't outsource our cleaning. We're not a big fancy, corporation, and so we decided we would all participate in the cleaning. And so those dots appeared all over the factory. It really helped us never miss a cleaning spot, and we used it as a way to get people involved in creating a solution and implementing it. And I think that's a really powerful way to respond to a crisis.
That's really interesting. Now, it sounds like you already had a culture of lean. Is that correct?
We did,
yeah.
But I'm going to say the reason why Clean Practice started, and there's a website, cleanpractice.org, where people can go and they can download the 10 principles of Clean Practice, and they can download their own COVID-19 template, response plan. So what we did have a lean culture, and we drew on that culture to create this, but the principles are easy for anybody to implement. And I think that's something that might be really a powerful message for your audience to hear, is that organizations of all kinds can implement Clean Practice in their workspaces. And the benefits are not only going to be a safer team, the other big benefit is your team's morale is going to be much better than it is going to be otherwise. And that's even if you do all the best, cleaning principles and everything like that, or safety principles. By getting your team involved and kind of identifying the problems and implementing the solution, their morale is going to improve. So clean practice came out of lean, it came out of the manufacturing sector, but it's appropriate for organizations of all kinds. We have had a huge variety of businesses. Over 500 organizations have downloaded the templates, the free templates that we're making available on that website. And it's been, I just saw a yoga studio in Dublin, Ireland, just downloaded the templates for clean practice, right? And because in the manufacturing world, there's always a safety committee, and manufacturing companies also not only have lean kind of often built in, they also, they're required to have a safety committee, and so they already had a mechanism to rely on to kind of go, okay, COVID-19 is new. How do we do this? A lot of non-manufacturing companies don't have a safety committee. They don't really have a way to. They don't have these skills that they can rely on to immediately come up with a good response. And so, what we're trying to do is share some great practices that will help all kinds of organizations to respond effectively to the challenge of COVID-19. And along the way, you can learn some really cool lean principles that will help your company, your organization's culture become stronger through this crisis.
What are your recommendations for how to create a culture of engagement? One of the things that I clearly heard in your plan and how it was implemented is that the entire team was engaged. How do you create a culture of engagement when someone might feel like, cleaning isn't their job, or they disagree with the process?
Right. Well, I think, you're right, there's a lot of variation in the cultures that are out there in different types of organizations. Have different starting points, and you need to adapt. If you're going to try to, use clean practice, you need to adapt it to your culture and your organization. But I think a great place to start is to do a Gemba walk, right? And it's a very simple process. You can say, hey, team, we've learned some new things about COVID-19. We want to share with you the very latest information that's been made available on the threat of this disease and how it's spread and what the symptoms are. And then we want to take, based on this information, we want to take a walk through our space together. And we just want to first identify where are the riskiest places in our workspace. And I think everybody's going to be interested in that, because if you're asking them to come into that workspace, right, because you're the type of business where you can't just send everybody home to work remotely. Like, you may be a manufacturing company, you may be a restaurant, you may be a retailer, you can't do it from home, right? So you're asking your team to come in. Well, why not involve them in identifying the risky areas? Identify the problems, right? It's at the minimum you're involving them and you're giving them permission to speak up and to participate in the conversation. And once they identify the problems, they're involved, right? They're saying, hey, you know what, this is an area of our business that we need to deal with. I don't know what to do. But once you start raising the questions, then you can start finding solutions. And often you can draw people into the solution finding. It's like, okay, you're right. This is an area where we often crowd together. We have to figure out a way to spread ourselves apart. Maybe we need a second break table for our break room, so there's more room to sit. Or maybe your concern is about airflow. And it's like, gosh, we could really increase the airflow in this room if we always had this back door cracked open instead of closed. There's some simple solutions that will reduce the risk. And as you get your team involved, you're going to find out that they are not only going to feel better about being at your workplace, but they're also going to maintain the safety practices much better because they've got ownership in your response.
As a manufacturing company, were your employees and your team already wearing some sort of mask or safety equipment?
Some of them were, but not all of them.
Okay.
So we did have masks being worn by some of the team that cuts some of the material because that creates dust. But much of our work is quite clean, and so not everybody, but everybody wears masks now.
And how has that transition gone?
It's gone fine. And I think the reason why it's gone well is because from the beginning, we laid the groundwork of team involvement, and we've been sharing information with the team. And so we have had, little resistance. Now, there have been times when, even a company like Indow, which originated something, called Clean Practice and is sharing it with other organizations, that doesn't mean our work is over. We need to check in and make sure that things are going well, because one thing I noticed when I was walking through the space is that when our team members went on break, first thing they do is whip their masks off and they'd start talking to each other in the break room. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of where people were concentrating. And also that the airflow wasn't so good in that break room. And we needed, even though we started this practice, we needed to update our practice and we needed to update our response. So we had a conversation about the mask wearing. We re-emphasized that it's important to wear your masks until you've got your food ready, and then you sit down, and that's reducing your exposure. And we figured out a way to create much better ventilation to that break room by running the exhaust fan that's in the kitchen and literally taking the door off the hinges so it couldn't be closed by accident, the door that was in the back. Uh-huh. So I think, there is resistance to mask wearing out there, but I think if you can get your team involved in solution making, then you're going to find that there's probably going to be less resistance.
Excellent. Sam Pardue, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's been my pleasure. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Again, that's Sam Pardue from Indow Windows, and you can find out more at cleanpractice.org.